It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. It's time for our Agile, Not So Agile episode of the Agile Daily Stand Up Podcast. It's Friday. And today I wanted to talk to you about a topic that has been on my mind a little bit lately. It's about how to know what you want. Now, what's interesting is I have said for some time that one of the downfalls, if you will, of teenagers, early 20s, anyone who's in that range, is that many times they have an inability to make decisions. And if they can make a decision, they still oftentimes don't know what they want or if they made the right choice even after making a decision. So, how do you know what you want in a world where most people don't know what they want? I think that's a good question. It's something worth exploring. So, probably the most difficult question in the world when someone asks you, "What do you want?" If you've ever asked someone, let's go get some food. Great. What do you want? Right? It's difficult. It's a difficult question to answer because for most people, what they want is only a matter of how they feel at that time. Their feelings and emotions are an intuitive guide, beckoning them to desire and to be attracted to something or someone, and forsaking and being repulsed by all other things in that moment, which is really, really interesting. The only problem with this is that most people really don't know what they want. Rather, they know what other people seem to have that they think they need. So, according to the theory of mimetic desire, which now I'm getting nerdy on you, much of what we want is the result of what other people have. Our single friends all get into relationships, and suddenly we want to be in a relationship. Our friends all got the new iPhone, and suddenly we want to make our upgrade. Our social instinct is to try and fit in, and it means that we largely mimic what others model. So if you're basing what you want on how you feel, then you're likely to be misled to pursue what it seems other people have. That actually makes a lot of sense. As a social species, we get a decent amount of satisfaction from trying to fit in. We get the new iPhone, and it is almost identical to the previous iPhone. This doesn't change our satisfaction with life or happiness one bit. However, by being part of the exclusive club of people who've upgraded their iPhones, it seems like the iPhone was worthwhile the price to pay for the upgrade, which makes it even more interesting. There's a book. I want to say it's by Luke Burgess. It's called Wanting: The Power of Memetic Desire in Everyday Life. It talks about how much of what we think we want is merely the imprint of what others have modeled us to believe that we need. Do you actually want to go to college? Or does it just seem like everyone's going to college, so you have to go or either get left behind? Do you want to get married? Or does it just seem as though everyone is partnering off and you don't want to be left as a third wheel or left alone? Do you want to have children? Or is everyone around you seemingly having kids, so now you should too? And or your parents have been asking you, when are we going to have grandchildren for half a decade? It doesn't help that billion-dollar corporations spend hundreds of millions of dollars annually on advertising and marketing schemes meant to convince you to want what they sell. In the age of social media, dating apps, and algorithms, it's possible to directly market to you using influencers who you have a personal or at least some form of relationship with. Don't forget to use my discount code on checkout. When I ask, "What do you want?" your brain inquires, "What should I want?" Now, that's an interesting conundrum. So, if you ask someone what they want, a lot of times their brain triggers and says, "At this moment, what should I want?" You look around at people like you, people in your community, and people in social media feeds, and see what they have and try to articulate your own desires based on what you see. There are likely few things that you genuinely desire, merely a long list of things that you believe that you should want to fit in and keep up. In our modern world, what others have is poor proxy for what we want or need. Just because your friends are all in relationships doesn't mean that you'll be happier if you're in one too. Just because all your friends got the new iPhone doesn't mean that you'll be more satisfied with life in general if you trade in your next version for the latest version. I'm still using an older one. To make matters worse, what other people may have not even been good to make matters worse, what's good for other people may not even be good for you. It's one of those things where we often cast judgment or have bias before we even start. Plenty of people have and do things that are terrible for their health and happiness. We've all seen what happens when meme challenges on TikTok turn into a bunch of impressionable teenagers eating Tide Pods. Remember that? That was a disaster. The more collectivist your native culture, the more powerful these social influences are. For example, when K pop stars Big Bang began sporting North Face puffy jackets, high schoolers across South Korea were routinely shelling out hundreds of dollars to get their own. The expensive jackets quickly arranged students into social hierarchies based on what they could afford, meaning that parents were often coerced to foot the bill for expensive jackets for their kids to fit in and avoid being bullied. It's not uncommon for trends and fads to spread like wildfire. And when these trends involve expensive cars, jewelry, and designer handbags, individuals find themselves maxing out their credit cards to afford the latest status symbol. But even if you're going to go to the financial extremes to keep up with the latest trend, social influences are likely always influencing how decisions with what is assumed to be normal. So if you're not going to do this, you're not going to be affected, but you are going to still see what people want you to see as normal. We grow up with expectations about how life should be and experience some existential relief when we reach culturally prescribed milestones. Graduate high school, check. Go to college, check. Get a good job, check. Date the ideal girl, check. Get married, check. Buy a house, check. Have kids, check. Retire, check. Die. Wait, I better not check that one. When, when we meet others' expectations, it feels good, like a sense of relief that we're doing the life right or we're doing the right thing. For many people, the satisfaction of meeting others' expectations is reward enough to continue with their typical lifestyle. There is nothing wrong with living a normal or average life, so if you find yourself satisfied with the typical script, stop reading now. You're likely already on the right track and you don't need this episode. But for each person who is content doing things the normal way and having an average life, there is no other who finds the normal script of life alienating, strange, and stifling. So I think part of this is learning what you want. And discovering what you want is synonymous with the process of individualization or individuation, meaning an individual requires at least two steps, though your mileage may vary. The first is the age old wisdom of cultivating self knowledge. There are entire articles and philosophies dedicated to helping individuals discover themselves. However, all of them require some sense of self curiosity. I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is a topic that can take you down a rabbit hole. We have to start with the assumption that you don't know everything about yourself. Most make the mistake of deciding who they are without any experience at all. They choose political parties, religions, favorite sports teams, and a variety of other things based entirely on arbitrary desires that they are surrounded by in their environment. It's all environmental. We pick them because they sound good when we tell other people or they help us to fit in. If everyone around you are fans of the Kansas City Chiefs, the Swifties, the same football team, supports a specific political party and believes a specific or certain religion, guess what the odds are that you will too? Self knowledge is about doing things and observing with curiosity how you react to your experience. Feelings and intuition can be a good measure of what you want, but only when supported by a lived experience. This requires some essential trial and error. It's not enough to think that you would enjoy something. You have to actually do the thing and see how your mind and body react to it. Likewise, it's not enough to merely disagree with something or dislike it merely on principle alone. If you disagree, it should only be after some thorough investigation into why. This is why I always teach about help me understand. This doesn't mean you have to be stupid. The words, you should try everything once, are far from sage advice. Please don't eat a Tide Pod. Use common sense. However, if you don't like something and can't articulate why, then perhaps your opinion is not your own and instead is based on one of your biases. You are, however, entirely capable of choosing experiences based on things that you've enjoyed before. If in the past you've enjoyed chocolate cake, you might imagine that you'll enjoy chocolate pie as well. If you try chocolate pie based on this hypothesis, you'd be acting not based on a desire. Everyone else likes chocolate pie, so I must as well, but instead based on your lived experience and self knowledge of chocolate cake. This process requires introspection. You must not only be able to take action to experience things firsthand, but also have a keen ability to sense your internal state. There's a reason that therapists spend so much time asking you how you feel, largely because most adults have trained themselves to actively avoid or ignore the internal feedback of their feelings. So, if you're trying to start with basic mindfulness, when we have an experience in the present, we might pay attention to how we are impacted by it. Does it feel good or does it feel bad? Does it give you energy or does it take energy away? How intense is this feeling? How and where in your body do you feel it and what do you feel? If you consider your preferences, your beliefs, and your opinions, then if your attitudes are not based on lived experiences, they're not based on self knowledge, they're based on bias. And lastly, individuation is often developed through the process of differentiation. If the collectivist strategy is to fit in, the individualist strategy is to stand out. This means that at times distinguishing yourself as an individual within a group by doing something different than everyone else. The trick is to be different without needlessly being a contrarian. Some people are trying to be different simply for the sake of being different. If everyone is going left, they will go right. They will go right, even if going right isn't in their best interest. Being different for its own sake isn't any better than conforming to the norm. They're both based on biased desires. Instead, you want to make decisions based on what's going to be best for you. In a sense, your decision should support your satisfaction with life, happiness, health, or to further your ambitions or goals. If what's best for you is actually what others are doing, then go for it. But when others are doing something that's not in your best interest, that's a good time to differentiate. When you differentiate, you search for and discover a new or different way of doing things. For some, this is innovation. For others, it's combining two or more things that have never been combined before. And for others still, it's finding a unique way of solving your own problem. Differentiations often require divergent or creative thinking. I love divergent thought processes. Through differentiating, you serve as a model for others to have opinions other than the status quo. For every trend, there is inevitably a trendsetter. The people who do things first and the early adopters are good at differentiating themselves. The process of individuation through self knowledge and differentiation leads to refining the self such that you become more authentic version of yourself and not a victim of your bias. Individuation is not synonymous with being selfish, and you don't have to abandon your collectivist values to become your authentic self. Again, in many cases, doing what other people are doing actually in your best interest. And a strength in numbers approach is great for problem solving, surviving, and thriving. And it can easily yield win win situations that are better than winning alone by yourself. However, it's important to be able to identify a source of your motivations. If the only reason that you want to do something is because it seems as though other people have it, then you might want to reconsider and, or even intentionally resist just for your own mental health. All right, so that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We would love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Have a great weekend. Until next time, do take care.